morning, everybody. This is an Instagram Live dedicated to updating everybody on everything lead stuff, and let me know if you can hear me. So any of your questions about lead, I'll answer them. And yeah, so it's September 7th. And what's crazy is this time last year I was in a much better position financially, but I was kind of trapped in a cycle of just figuring out how to try to sell the product, make the product, fulfill the product, all this stuff. Bad audio? Oh my god. So is this thing not working? Is the audio getting better? There's a delay of like 20 seconds, so just kind of. Let's see, that's not, works better closer to you. Alright, yeah, so it's manageable. You're going to manage? Well, if this thing is improved when I bring it closer to my face, that's significantly better. I probably had a little lead poisoning as a child, because I was the firstborn. That means that my mom had a lot of lead in her bones, went into her blood, when the calcium went into my bones, and the lead came with it. So, I could have gotten a worse deal if I was born in the 80s. I was born in 1992, so I was born in 1982, but much worse. If I was born in 1972, probably even worse than that. And it wouldn't have stopped with my gestational lead. I would have got exposed to lead in the air, lead in food, water, etc. So, why am I saying this? I don't know. I'll get into that in a minute, but the update is just that I've been prevented from selling the lead test temporarily because I didn't comply with aspects of an EPA rule that's so obscure. Most people who work at the EPA don't even know that it exists. However, it is a pretty powerful way to enforce chemical safety rules, and it is, in a roundabout way, actually the way that lead enforcement works on the lead paint side. So the Toxic Substances Control Act spans a bunch of different departments. They have really long acronyms. It is insane. So, but it's a complicated rule, and I'm now an expert on it. But I don't want to be. But, I have to be. Because it's like I had to file some things. I keep on just making mistakes. But the EPA people are very nice. And they're like, yeah, you don't know what you're doing. You got to do it again. Or, anyway. So that's the situation. So what I've been doing is just basically work on the warehouse, work around here. This place is really a lot of work. And what's crazy is, like, when I started everything lead, there wasn't that much going on. It was pretty basic. I'm trying to learn about lead. I'm trying to learn about how to detect lead. I'm trying to figure out a way to end lead poisoning. Because I found, and I got really duped by Lead Safe Mama. I legitimately thought she was traumatized by lead. And that's why she acted so crazily. But I didn't know about her backstory, about her 2003 total lost fire, what really happened, what really went down. And she is such a dunce that it's all obtainable. And we'll get into that soon enough, but not on this stream. But update on Tamara, though. I did file a lawsuit. She finally accepted the service, asked for an extension on the time to respond for 30 days. That time ran out on September 5th, so now September 7th. She's like, I can't get a lawyer. I'm not in New York, so I can't get a lawyer. Like, Tamara, you're a moron. You don't have to be in New York to get a lawyer for this federal lawsuit. It's not that complicated. She called 15 lawyers, she said. Alright, she's just in so much trouble with me that it's not going to be fun to fight this lawsuit. Anyway, we said we'd wait another 10 days before we ask for summary judgment, which basically just means the other side is not playing ball. They're not showing up. We gotta end this and call victory, and so that would be good, I guess. But not really what I wanted. But it doesn't really matter. not like the information between us that was shared is privileged in any way, so I can say or do whatever I want anyway. So no matter what she does, it's kind of over. Because like really the way she misrepresents lead exposure is egregious and damaging to the population. And that's kind of like, I think why lead exposure is still a thing. It's because all the groups that participate in this all have their own particular sub-niche of like lead poisoning prevention. And it might not be actual prevention, it might just be response, it might be something to do, you know, in the industry. The bottom line is lead has always been profitable. It even says right here, this is an old Dutch Boy paint, which is the primary paint sold in the United States. Lead paint. Use Dutch Boy painters products for profit, for protection. Now, these guys had great marketing, but for profit, for protection. Lead was going to make you money. You're going to put this on somebody's house, they're going to pay you for it. They're going to love the product. It's going to protect the house. It's going to protect your investment if you put it on your own house. If you own a lead mine, you're stupid rich because you just dig up lead and sell it and you get tons of money. So, the truth is still here. Consultants on how to rip down the house properly. People actually doing the lead work. People inspecting for lead. People investigating elevated blood lead levels in children. People doing research. People, there's another one too, but I'm answering this question. Why would they use lead in paint? Because they could. Because if you have a lead mine, you have to sell the lead. It doesn't sell itself. And who wants lead metal? You're going to sell bullets. You're going to sell batteries. But in the 1800s, batteries weren't really even a thing, probably. So you got to sell the paint somehow. You got to sell the lead somehow. And so, and lead is also a great paint. I mean, you look at this white wall behind me. Not lead. Titanium and zinc. And zinc is harder to get than lead. Even though it kind of comes in with lead in the ground, they're in the same area. But titanium is even harder to get. Lead is almost like too easy to get. You need electricity to get the others. So, like I was saying, there's all these different sub-niches. So if you're not selling lead, you're selling your services, maybe you're a grant getter, you know. Everybody's got their fingers in the pie of lead. And I do too. I mean, I make these lead test kits. I've made lead test kits since 2019. It's just, here's the crazy part, Whaler. It's that the lead mine owners, they own the lead paint companies. The lead game is a totally, like, incestuous thing. It's a vertically integrated cartel style. And the crazy thing is, that's what made lead paint so prolific in penetrating the market. This vertical integration, because it made like the motivation to sell it super high. What's going on is all these different groups who do lead safety stuff is not vertically integrated. It's fragmented as hell. There's way too many people, and they're all their own entity, and none of them communicate effectively, either sharing information and protocols that would protect people, or collaborating in any meaningful way. I mean, I get don't collaborate with me because who knows who I am? Like, don't have a science degree. Like, I might just show up and just tell you that you're stupid, but you might be, and you might be in your best interest to say, yeah, I've been told I was stupid a million times, mostly by myself, because I'm like, that was dumb. What was I thinking? Oh, you barely knew anything, Eric, and you just made these horrible decisions because you barely knew anything, and you just Dunning-Krugered your way into a bad situation. Now that you have more insight, it's time to switch jackets. You know, like if you're trading in the market, your stock starts to go the other way, I'm going to ride this stock down until I have $0. No, sell the stock, buy short positions, right? If it's clear that the stock is cratering, and that's kind of where it goes. Elected official, I mean, I don't think that the government is government plays a crucial role in both exposing the population to lead. Two key aspects where the government messed up, and really when I say the government, and like if I say the EPA or anything like that, it's not a monolithic thing. Like it's just a bunch of people who have jobs, and the federal government is so complicated. There's so many things that it would be impossible for one person to even do a bunch of things because it's like so dense in the amount of work. It's really not efficiently set up. But the government messed up in two ways, crucially. One was something called the keyhole rule, and this is on lead gas. And the lead gas is what exposed the population to the most lead for the longest time and caused the most damage, in my opinion, to society. The keyhole rule says that we know that lead is potentially harmful and dangerous, but we need to prove that lead gas specifically is causing damage before we ban it. So they basically put the burden on the scientists to prove that it was bad instead of the people who are selling it right now that it was okay. And that's just crazy. Because it's going to take years to get that evidence that lead is damaging. And it took all the way to the 1990s to see that those extremely lead-poisoned children in the 70s who are now 20 are quick to shoot each other, commit violent acts. Mega crime wave in the 90s. Most of it is by lead. How much longer do you think inspections are going to be in demand in New York City? Actually, August has passed, so anybody who hasn't already gotten a New York City lead inspection of their multifamily housing unit is in violation of the law. How effective they're going to be at actually enforcing that, I have no idea. In New York generally, I believe that there is a law on the books that should be probably, become official soon, in effect soon, where if you do a real estate transaction of property pre-1978, it has to be inspected for lead. So the overall demand for lead inspections will continue to be a thing. Other states adopting, is New York City, so New Jersey is not going to, as a state, adopt this. Connecticut and PA aren't definitely not going to adopt this as a state. But there are other local governments who do rental registry type stuff. So it's a good policy. But the people who own property, they don't want that. Asbestos is another bad one, yeah. Well, I totally agree. It's just idiotic to test kids for lead and act like you're not doing the stupidest thing possible. It's okay to test kids, but why is that your primary way of testing? For lead. So the keyhole rule is stupid. Rental registry just means if you have a rental property, you have to register it and you have to tell the government if there's lead in there or not. You may have to also do some dust wipes yearly. The dust wipes yearly though is honestly just whack, kind of half measure. Because you're saying, is there a hazard? Then they're just going to clean the shit up. Pardon my language, but let's be real. That rule sucks. You gotta have dust wipes? Alright, yeah, it's not a surprise. It's not a secret test. They know when the people are coming. Clean up the dust. And then the rest of the year there's mad dust. That rule sucks. You know what's better? Give the whole group, give the whole building floor specs, which I'm going to do. And when I get freaking people are so crazy. If you live in a house, a housing unit project, whatever the hell it's called, and you got a bunch of units and you're paying subsidized rent, it's owned by the government, HUD, let me know. I want to come through to you and give you floor specs. I have yet to be able to connect with one of these folks who's actually does something. I don't know what goes on because I'm like, hey, I'm doing something. What's up? I give you free tests. We test the whole building. Doesn't pan out. What's wrong with people? They have lead poisoning. Huh? They have poverty. They have situations. They got a whole mess of stuff going on. And unlike them, my primary goal is end lead poisoning. For probably pretty much a month. Yeah, it is idiotic to test kids for lead as a primary way of identifying lead. I mean, you test a kid for lead, you didn't prevent anything. You're preventing the ongoing exposure, which does something. But the half-life of lead in the brain is 2 years. So if you say, oh, the kid has a blood level of 5, and they're 3 years old, they're already cooked. They already lost IQ points. Like, there's honestly not going to be much of a difference if they have lead poisoning at that level for the rest of their life. And this is actually funny. I'm going to start bringing this up. Because what's the difference between a kid who's exposed to lead one time? So let's say you have a 5-year-old. And they get one exposure, the house gets renovated, they move in, they get exposed for a couple months. They move to a new house that's built in 2018, they got no lead, they got no other sources, they eat a low lead diet, which does something. I mean, it could be worse, but worse or better, depends. Diet is not nothing, but it's also not really a big deal in most cases. And then the lead goes away. So you have the one kid who's going to be chronically poisoned, the other kid has the same peak blood level and it goes down. Is there going to be a statistically significant difference in the amount of damage done to the child's brain? Not sure. I don't know. I don't know the pharmacokinetics of lead. I don't know when and how the neurons die. I don't know how the global rewiring takes place. But I would assume that there's not too much of a difference. Never having any water on your computer is better than having water on your computer. But I think we could all agree that getting water on your computer for a longer period of time is going to be worse. So, that's kind of... I want to find out, because I bet you nobody's done that study. And that's how lame this entire industry is. Like, the amount of information we have is really pretty lame. We say, oh, great job, people who've done the research. And yeah, great job. Like, good research, good information. But it's like, they were just... Everybody's telling them no, because these folks were paying people to kind of, not do anything against the lead. Fluorospec, I don't know. I think Fluorospec. Fluorospec is a spray test, that I make. You spray the liquid on the surface, shine the UV light. It makes the lead turn into a fluorescent green when you shine the light on it. So if you were to do a dust wipe, you would take the dust, put it onto a wipe, digest it in nitric acid, run it through a spectrometer, and then it would tell you how much lead was on the floor, total, or I guess as like a concentration, and then you know the amount of liquid you used, and then you work backwards to the amount of square footage you actually tested, 1 square foot, but you can test a half a square foot and you just multiply everything by 2, and then you get a loading coefficient, and then you find out how much lead is on the floor and how dangerous that is, because lead loading on floors is correlated with IQ loss through research, and this is like a critical thing, because in the absence of evidence, nothing moves. There was a conference recently, and the guy's like, why do we have to talk about how much it costs? They're kids, there's a cost to society, yes, but like, we have to protect the kids. And I'm just like, it was just so much flamboyant nonsense for nothing. I'm like, this guy's such an idiot. Like, yeah. And I said, I'm like, it costs money. That's why we gotta test how much it costs, because it costs money to society. So we have to quantify that so we can figure out how much it's worth it to expend on that. Because even if it's sad, if it doesn't cost money, Nobody's gonna spend money on it unless they feel really bad. And like sometimes the government feels really bad, right? They say this is such a messed up situation, but it's not the government's job to feel bad, really. It's to follow the law because it's an internalized system of amoral functionality. And I mean, the law actually says that you shouldn't even care about the freaking costs. But like, to convince politicians or convince people, I don't even know what convinces people, honestly. It's just how to get clout. Because this same guy teamed up with Consumer Reports, and they put out a thing about baby food, trying to get transparency in baby food labeling. Shit is the dumbest shit I've ever heard of. Like, alright, yeah, I guess write how much heavy metals are in the baby foods. This guy was eating food that had 100 times more lead every day, easily. And everybody who works at Consumer Reports ate the same food, because I know how old they are. So, like, the amount of lead in food now is really not doing that much, honestly. Everybody's getting way better off from lead, and we should not scream that it has to be zero right away when there's other people who are severely suffering from lead. There's a lot of, like, low-hanging fruit. It's like if you have debt. If you have, like, 5 credit cards, let's say, and let's say you have 3 of the credit cards, you have no interest for 18 months. One of the credit cards is 10% APR, and the other credit card is 28% APR. And you owe the same amount of money on each one. Which ones are you paying off first? The one that you owe, that you're owing tons of interest every month, or the ones that cost you no interest, or virtually no interest, not a lot of interest. Like if there's a person, and then the same thing says something with Black Lives Matter. They were saying like, oh, white lives matter. Like, okay, yeah, white lives matter too. Any kind of life matters. Obviously, that's a given. But like, there's certain people who are getting a really difficult time. It's disproportionate. And so you can't say, oh yeah, all lives matter, but like, yeah, okay, all lives matter, but like some of the lives are in jeopardy right now. And so the same is true with lead. Right now, there's a medicated enrollee who is pregnant, who is taking her belly bump home to a house that has lead-based paint dust particles strewn throughout it. And, the obviously critical thing is, and the easy thing, equip her with a methodology to identify the particles of lead-based paint dust so she can clean them up and keep her baby away from it. So she, A, even knows that there's a hazard. She can educate herself about what lead is and how she needs to protect herself from it, how dumb it is that it's even installed in her environment to begin with, and how much of a violation that is, to her, like, rights. But, worrying about amount of, negligible amounts of food, lead, is probably just something that people are doing more for themselves. Consumer Reports doesn't really stand to gain much protecting people from lead-based paint dust, right? That's not their target market. It's not even their function, really. So, like, whatever, they're going to do what they're going to do. If they want to talk about lead food, but the way they misrepresent it is so dumb. Because they take away all the autonomy of the people consuming their content to understand what's going on, and they spoon feed them these percentages, which greenlit Let's Safe Mama to do the same thing, but in an even more egregiously misrepresentative way. Because Let's Safe Mama was like the epitome of, she's really prolific at setting up a situation where you can't say anything because she's got all her bases covered. She's like crafty like that. And she's been crafty like that for a while. And I bet you it's been like since childhood. And so when she got a hold of this lead thing, and this wasn't her first thing, it wasn't her first scheme, she was like, I really got something here because, and she didn't even try to do the advocacy first. She tried to do a lawsuit first, but she was so like heavy-handed in the lawsuit, and then she just didn't have good enough legal representation that she just basically ran out of money to keep fighting it. And they just beat her. They settled, like, they paid her for her lawyer fees, and they just settled everything. Like that. And then she did the advocacy. But she said, hey, look, my kid has permanent brain damage, and lead is bad in any amount. And chemical tests don't work because they don't disclose every, part per million of lead. Like, as if it matters. Like, context is what matters. You know what I mean? If you have food that has 100 or 1,000 parts per million, it's poisonous. If you have a dish that has 1,000 parts per million, you're going to get exposed to more lead in the potato that you eat off of the dish than you're ever going to get exposed to the dish. It's not that, 1 in 1,000 particles in the glaze is lead. Okay, like, that's not nothing. Don't get me wrong, but it's also 1 in 1,000 particles of a melted ceramic glaze. Like, that's not really going anywhere. How many milligrams come off of that? And 1,000 times less of that is lead. You're not really getting exposed to stuff, that doesn't glow. I don't think so. And the evidence that I've checked, leach testing confirms that. Yeah, TJ Maxx is sketchy. Are you able to ask those questions? Your local health department. Local health department came through, inspected my XRFs. They were like, knew everything. I'm like, great. The people who work, they always know everything. They're always like, they're always doing a good job. And so my job is like, I'm just doing whatever. So like, I could say, and I am just basically got done saying this situation is completely idiotic and backwards. The whole thing is fried, and everybody's out for themselves. And that doesn't stop. I mean, you got a department, they call themselves lead poison prevention. They don't prevent shit. And they act like they prevent lead poisoning, but they don't. They call themselves lead poison prevention, but I don't see them preventing anything. They just remediate. It's like saying a person who's a firefighter. They don't prevent fires, they put them out. Dust wipes all the time. Yeah, you got Mecca, you got to get a floor spec when you can get it. Lead pipes are not good, obviously. They're way less dangerous if you treat the water appropriately. Still, come on. Why the hell would you have a lead pipe? That same guy, Tom, who teamed up with Consumer Reports, he said that it's like drinking through a lead straw. And it is, It's bad. It's stupid to use a lead pipe. Whaler's gone, so. I see painters heating the lead up to chip it off old wood. What's going on there? Yeah, so if you heat it up with a torch, that's not a good idea. I think that's illegal. There's a temperature limit. Because above a certain temperature, the lead carbonate will decompose into lead oxide and carbon dioxide, probably. And that's not good. So, yeah, it should be worried about. Can you product allow you to get a PhD and since it contributed to lead science? It should give me a free PhD. I would never go to school. I only went to school because they forced me to go to school. And like the second day in school, I was like, what the heck is going on here? This place is terrible. I mean, what are we learning about? Like, what is this? And then I got to learn at the same pace as all the other students? Come on. I need a little bit more help in nothing, because I'm way ahead of these students. No, I'm just kidding. No, I need help paying attention because it was so boring. And there's so many people, and they're all drooling, I mean, I learned early on, like, this is something going on here, Like, my brain is functioning. Let's start thinking about stuff. I hated school. Did that, but let's say Mama have anything to do with stopping selling the kits? No. Let's say Mama is just such a dunce. She just deleted me the whole time because she said that she thought the other guys have a patent, which they don't. I don't think my brain capacity has gone down since messing with lead. This has really actually been a life-alteringly positive experience because, it allowed me to get really deep onto a topic that is just has a lot of depth. There's like I'm still learning a lot. I mean, I learned so much more this year. It's crazy. I didn't even know until like April that I was even the whole time selling floor spec illegally. That's a revelation, right? I didn't know that, like how like, like I'm a super optimist. I talk to you. You must understand what I'm saying. That's a given, right? If you're not understanding what I'm saying, then we got a huge problem. So I carry this with me in like life, and that was a mistake. Because not everybody's on the same page, on the same level. Not everybody's got even remotely like the capacity or interest in doing certain things, and that's fine. But it's insane to say, hey, everybody, like we're going to go to space right now. Ready to do your job, and they're like, what is my job? You're on the rocket. You're not going to fare very well. And so for this lead poison prevention, I assumed that there were insurmountable complexities. The government is like a thing that like we don't interact with. It's just like a rule maker and a rule enforcer. With lead, it's like the saving grace to this whole thing, ironically. And the people don't want to take advantage of it. They have a $350 million earmarked for lead-based paint removal in the most vulnerable population. HUD-funded housing. So that's low-income housing built for and paid for by the federal government. And the federal government installed, that's the second big-ass blunder, is installing mad lead products in these houses. Lead pipes, lead paint. And then eventually, that's the only reason why there's even really lead laws like there are. Title 10 was meant to undo the government's screw-up in installing this lead. And then having these, because like once you have these Section 8 properties, obviously people living there aren't renovating them because they don't have any money. That's why they're living there. And the people who own the properties, if not the federal government directly, also are not spending money on these properties because they don't need to, strictly speaking. They're getting a check from the government mostly, and they're getting some tenants who have low income and lead poisoning. And they themselves, everybody who's involved, all the people virtually involved in the situation also had lead poisoning. That's what's compounding this and making it even more difficult to overcome. It's just that the people are just dulled out. They're difficult to work with. They're difficult to get. It's difficult. I found it impossible, virtually, to pin anybody down and get them to admit that they were doing something stupid. But it happens all the time. And like it's clear, like, oh, my mic connection is struggling? Are you serious? I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I'm talking right into the mic. Somebody else confirm that my mic connection is struggling and I'll get up and fix it, but in the absence of that, Cherry, maybe your mic connection is struggling. Floor spec sales are suspended for probably another month. I don't know why. It's not a loose wire though. Alright, well, hold on. Let's shut up. Hold on. I think I can close that. So I can do all this work. Yeah. I mean, whatever. People don't like to get pinned down and say, hey, you're wrong. I guess that's their prerogative. But, I can't really say I very much respect that. Because it's just not conducive to doing a good job, basically. If you are so preoccupied with being right, you're an idiot. Because there's no way you're right about everything all the time, so you definitely should try to optimize your chances of being right now by admitting that you're wrong. This shirt is not for sale. It's actually a Fendi shirt that I just silkscreen my logo on. But this actually looks like the cards. Excuse me. Alright. We're going to go back. So how's this mic connection? Is better? Thank you. So, yeah. So, the issue is obviously compounded by the fact that the moving parts in this are just, they don't know how to use, like, because I don't really care about anything but any lead poisoning and being right in the most, like, strictest sense. I would rather be told and admit that I'm wrong right now than continue to be wrong for the next 5 days, let's say. It's going to be better for me to admit that I'm wrong right now than to be an idiot for the next 5 days. So, yeah, the shirt is fine. So I thought you were talking about my mic for a second, so I picked the thing back up. But yeah, no, that's basically this problem. That's the problem. But it's not. But I have no pretense. I don't have any pretense on this. I'm like just coming off the street. You know what I mean? I'm just coming in off the street saying, "Hey, everybody, I've been cooking up these lead tests like a maniac. You know, I make a lot of them. They're high quality. I have them for sale. You can buy them, and that's all that I'm saying. I'm not saying anything else. I'm not saying, hey, I have a PhD. You should. I'm smart, right? Yeah. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, hey, I've been working under the pretense that I'm doing a really good job, or that the mission is coherent, or that the core of my job is inherently the best modality for carrying this practice of lead poison prevention out. I'm not saying that. As a matter of fact, I'm questioning everything and everybody who's involved in this. And that obviously would make anybody who is doing anything but kind of going along the same line as me very uncomfortable, because there's a potential that your job description should be changed to doing something else. And thereby your entire reality is going to be warped into some new thing, because you're just a cog in a machine that is poisoning kids actively. And that's my position, is that the current zeitgeist poisons kids actively. And it uses kids as if we use... Because imagine this, World War II, D-Day. We threw how many bodies at the beach? Literally. They just became bodies once they hit the beach. Very sad. Did we need to do that? Probably. Could we have just drone struck the entire coast and killed all the Nazis with drones? Yeah, if we had drones. But obviously, being like the primitive people we were in the 1930s or 40s, just sending battalions of soldiers to the beach to flamethrow and shoot their way through the enemy encampments is the best strategy we came up with. Pretty barbaric. Same is true with this lead situation. Throwing kids at the problem is just straight up insane. knowing that we have drones, you know? Like, we've had chemical tests that work fine for years, but the way that the laws were, and that's the one thing that gets me down is like, it's not just people with PhDs or people who think their job description is really fire, who have a problem being wrong. It's the fact that the system doesn't have a really intense check. So there's like, you know, checks and balances in the government, right? But almost like what Doge was trying to be, in a way, was like, this is just like the smart strategy, you know, like we're just gonna cut through all the red tape and just get it done. I have no idea what the hell was going on with that. In reality, right? That just was insane. Ketamine fueled time for everybody. The crazy thing is that, like, that strategy would be great for something like lead, minus the ketamine, but with all the crazy thinking, because you just gotta say, hey, should you be fired? Is your job? What are you doing? Maybe you should do something completely differently, and that's just the crazy part about it. But nobody's gonna, like, the system doesn't have a way to fend off D-Day. If it seems like that's the only option at the time, but then it's like D-Day was one day, you know. If we had to do that again, we would no doubt use drones or do something that would not expose so many people to violence. On our side, at least. But like, but you can't fault the people on D-Day for doing that, because they really didn't have another choice. I don't think. So, although they could have just shot the hell out of the beach with bombs earlier. I don't see why they wouldn't do that. Because their planes sucked so much they would get shot down. They didn't have ICBMs or whatever. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. The situation with the lead is just that, you know, it's been ongoing. So like, it's like the decision to use kids as a test for lead was made a long time ago, and it's still being made today on a daily basis, and that's just an extension of the policy. And so at the time, the policy seemed reasonable, but since so much time has passed, 30 years have passed, we're still having the same policy being enacted when there's far better solutions. Lead check was the first really good lead detection test product. It leveraged sodium rhodizonate mixed with tartaric acid to find lead. Works pretty good. Has relatively low false positive rate. But the issue is that the people who made it, couple who made it, they didn't really seem to understand the utility of what they had made. And they were more focused on just making a company, making money, and doing whatever the hell they were doing. So they had friends, hung out, you know, probably had kids, maybe, did whatever. Had pets, probably bought a bunch of houses. The lady's husband passed away, then she sells the whole company to 3M. And 3M is, of course, like, soullessly going to just sell it. And so the crazy thing is the product has been the same price for years. This product has been overpriced for a long time. How does the product not change price? Inflation is a thing, right? Yeah, there's plenty of room on the price because the product is overpriced. $5 for one test, and this is in 2019 when I started doing it. I was like, this is a joke. I'm going to make mine for 50 cents a test, and I'll still make money on it. Haha, good one. 3M is a sticky situation indeed. So, and not even just because of the tape, mostly because of the environmental aspects. So I don't know. They didn't know what they had. They didn't know that chemical detection of lead allows regular people without access to advanced technology to presumptively identify the presence of a toxic substance in their environment, make them all safer. And that's kind of like, that's how I got into it. I started making test kits for drugs because people would buy street drugs and not know what's going on, and then they would take them, they would get hurt or die. And I've known very many people who are, you know, I was friends with, who died. And they died, they didn't have to die. They died because they did stupid stuff. And that's probably because there's not a situation where they had access to making smarter decisions easily. Like if you have a seatbelt in your car, you're going to use it, most likely. It's like pretty easy to click it and not die. That's a great idea. But the thing is, click it or ticket. Not click it or be safe. But it's easy to wear a seatbelt. It's not easy to test your Molly for meth, right? So I made that happen. And because I knew it was a good thing to do, it helps people. And I can make money doing it. And so the lead tests are an extension of that, essentially. Because I wasn't allowed to sell that, because it's drug paraphernalia. So I made the lead tests, whatever. I still didn't even know really what I had. Because like the whole problem of lead could be solved with sodium rhodesonate swabs. Really, though. They cost virtually nothing. No, I haven't made those drug tests in a long time. They were fire though. I did something actually kind of like what 3M or LeadCheck did, which was separate like the active. So like there's like an active component that changes color, and then you have the acid that catalyzes the reaction or makes the conditions for the reaction appropriate. And what the people who were doing the drug test, because I wasn't the first person to sell any of this stuff. There's people already selling it. I just did a better job. The drug test would always be mixed, so the acid would be mixed with the active constituent, and it would degrade. And you have to keep it in the fridge, and it would degrade. And I'm like, this is just so stupid. Because, first of all, there's hundreds of tests per bottle. If it's going to degrade in like 4 months, most of it's going to go to waste, obviously. So it's just a very inefficient, stupid thing, and then you're like, oh, worried about your thing not working? It's just lame. So I separated the acid and the other part, and then, you know, have 2 bottles, you drip them together, and then boom, it works. That's what 3M or LeadCheck did. Sodium rhodesonate isn't stable in water, and it needs an acid to become active. So they took 2 ampules, you know, sodium rhodesonate and alumina powder to make it a little bit more like cut with alumina powder, and then the tartaric acid in another vial. You crush them together, mix them up, do your test. So I just took sodium rhodesonate, put it onto a swab, and I said, everybody has vinegar. You can use your vinegar. You can test it, and you'll get virtually the same results. So if every person in America had like 10 swabs, they could find out if they have a lead hazard in their house right now. And that would cost like 1 cent per person at scale, probably. How are they going to get them? That's a whole other story. I have no idea. But, you know, I could send probably them in an envelope, you know. I don't have no idea. You know what I mean? Everybody should be getting these before they have kids, at least, and that would solve the problem of new poisoned people. That's a good question, Nick. Why do the Amazon swabs just use water instead of acid? Because they're fucking scammers. Because they're idiots. Because they're at the receiving end of a $1.5 million lawsuit by me because of false advertising. They don't contain sodium rhodesonate. They contain something else, a different chemical called xylitol orange. And they're liars. They copied my packaging and design of the product. They copied my freaking, all this thing I wrote on the label. They literally just copied it and then they just sold it with a different chemical. What the hell's wrong with those people? But they're Chinese. Like, I can see there being a language barrier. I can see there being, what's the difference? I don't sell the products anywhere because there actually was a violation to sell them this whole time. But I'm working to rectify that with the EPA, so fingers crossed. Yeah, you probably saw Lumetallic's account copying my videos. That lady, Chelsea, actually worked for me in the last fall. She was the worst. Most, like, gaslighty person. What a jerk. Whatever. You know? It's so good to get away or get some perspective. Because I don't know what I don't know. And when people come off and say, hey, you know, I got credentials and you should listen to me, I'll do a good job. I'm like, pretty, she said herself, you're not very discerning. Yeah, I'm not. My brain has been damaged by just thinking I have friends, but they're just like idiot jerks who don't care about me, apparently. And so, you know, because I was addicted to opiates. I would be all the time. Oh yeah, something happened. The deal's only for 10 of them at once, and then it restarts or something. I'm like, all right, whatever. That's weird. I don't care. You have my drugs, you know. And then people would just scam me all the time, and like my friends, but they're addicted to drugs, so like of course they're gonna scam. But like I don't care because I'm not riding around in a bad neighborhood, but doing stuff I don't want to do. I'm hanging out, getting drugs. So, I guess it just left me with some brain damage that I kind of assume that everybody is like nice and not a jerk. And in this business realm, that has been so far from the truth. Because I assume that like I'm like, hey, everybody will be able to see that I have like insanely good ideas, and I can easily like pick up and run with whatever we're talking about. So, what are we gonna do? Make some money, do a good job, team up. I have some ideas. I have some ideas of things that you could start doing. And like the amount of people who signed on to that, almost zero. I'll tell you that much. I still hold out hope though that there might be some people that are like, you know, down. Because implementing strategies that are known to work works. Every time. And if it didn't work, there's a reason why. And it can be overcome. So basically any problem can be solved pretty easily. It just takes competence and flexibility. And that's something so, you know, the lead world, it's so missing. And it's missing because of lead poisoning of the people who are involved, and also individual interests that don't align with solving the problem. Because I don't want this job forever. This is a terrible job, I have to say. It's been very rewarding for me, but it's also been very, very, very costly. It's very sad. It's very distressing. And the people, by the time they interact with me, they're already pretty concerned. And so it's like a lot of like talking to concerned people who have had something potentially tragic happen to them, and they're upset and angry, and they're just looking for answers, and they're ready to be exploited, basically. And they do get exploited by Tamara Rubin, high-level exploiter. You could even say any other group. I don't know, you know. Exploitation is an interesting concept because, like, if you're not giving somebody, like, the really, like, inner circle deal, they're getting exploited to some degree. And if you have an institution that comprises the means to production on a specific money-making scheme, and what I mean by that is, like, let's say you have a not-for-profit, or an organization like Consumer Reports. They collect money and generate salaries for all the people involved. But like that in and of itself is like another thing. And so the people who are participating in that are just trying to get their job fulfilled. Like they've been hired to do a job and they're doing that job. But collectively, there's something going on where money is being funneled into an institution. Like Pure Earth, for example, is a probably better example than Consumer Reports. Pure Earth is like not-for-profit. I think they suck, honestly. They have a $6 million a year budget, fancy office in the city, bunch of staff. Seems like they're always going to a concert. You know, they're not breaking their necks every day to end lead poisoning. They're just not. They're hanging out. Now, should people not hang out? I don't know. I would never allow my organization members to hang out. That's crazy, you know. But like, I don't know. I guess it's just what, you know, you walk around on a Saturday, look at all the stuff that people are doing. They're just hanging out. Like, okay, that's fine. But when there's some issue as serious as lead exposure, it should be taken care of like immediately, like as soon as possible. And I've only been not doing anything for the last month because I guess needed a break, and also I can't sell Florspec. I can't make more Florspec. I have nothing to do, but finally fix this warehouse. Finally get the ancillary components, because like the test is great. You find lead, you'll see it glow. Okay, that's amazing. Like that's like solves like almost the whole problem right there. But how do you clean up? How do you appropriately judge your prenatal vitamins, how dangerous they are? You know, like all these skills to navigate lead, because you're worried about prenatal vitamins. I mean, your kid hasn't been born. You're gonna take a tiny, and here's the thing. Here's like the understanding that nobody gets because it doesn't serve the people who sell this information. If you look at something in terms of parts per billion, that's like a percentage. It's like a proof of lead. Like if you think about it in liquor terms. What if you drank 1 drop of liquor? Would you get drunk? No. So if you take a 1 gram supplement and it has 100 parts per billion lead, you might say that's a lot of lead. 100 parts per billion, oh my god. But it's only 1 gram. So you're only getting 100 nanograms of lead. An adult mother take 8,800 nanograms a day and only have a blood lead level increase of 0.35 micrograms per deciliter. A kid take approximately 4 times less than that, 2.2 micrograms a day. It's going to get the same 0.35 micrograms per deciliter blood lead level increase. This number is just an abstraction from the current blood lead reference level of 3.5. But we know that harmful effects start basically at any lead detected, but they get worse, you know. You don't want to be above 3.5, that's for sure. You really don't want to be above 2, because that's when you start seeing statistically significant increases in ADHD. And I forgot exactly what there's a crazy chart that they used to come up with that figure. The FDA used to come up with that figure when they did the total diet study. And then they contrived all this math. Talks about how you lose 1 IQ point after 1 microgram per deciliter or something. They extrapolate that if you have a blood level of 0.35, and that's like the average you're going to get from your diet pretty much, the 2.2 and that 8.8 is like, that's basically what you're going to get from the average diet. If you follow like the food groups the way they did it and you're eating an average food, they don't know everything, but also it's a pretty good approximation. It's just important to understand. Because when you don't understand something, you really can't make very good choices. So, that's the video. Enjoy the rest of your day. I just got cut off on Instagram, so. Anyway. Yeah, no, it was pretty much it. You don't have good decisions. Don't have good information. Not good decisions. So, I'm going to get back to work. Got a lot to do around here. Good day.